everyone. Welcome. See some folks are still joining us. I see some familiar faces and names.
So good to see everyone. Hey, Kim, how are ya?
I'm good, Amanda. Good to see you.
It's so good to see you too.
All right. Well, it is 3 o'clock, and I want to respect everyone's time. And welcome to the April SPDIG Directors webinar. I am not Jennifer Coffey. I'm actually her colleague, Dave Gardino, and worked with her for a long time, many years, and love the SPDIG program. She's done a fantastic job with it, thanks to you all. And want to go ahead and get started. We have a full agenda today. So next slide, please. There we go. All right. Jennifer always likes to start with something a little fun. So let's talk about what is your go-to comfort book or movie. And I don't know if you could guess which is which, Jennifer or mine, but I'll tell you shortly. If you want to go ahead and put your response in the chat, that would be great. Definitely Princess Bride for me. Inconceivable. Great. Raising Arizona. That's a great one. As you wish. I like it. Keep the chats coming. I actually added Princess Bride as my go-to. I can't help it. If I stumble across that on cable, I will probably start watching it wherever it is in its run. Jennifer, to my surprise, put the Bad Boys for Life. Maybe some of you knew that about her, but I did not. So that's an interesting choice. Fried Green Tomatoes. Oh, Inglorious. That's a good one. Great. Some great movies on there. Maybe it'll reinvigorate us to go back and watch a couple of those. All right, next slide. We'll go ahead and get started. So high-level agenda. We did some connecting before the content. I'll cover some quick SIG Network news, and then on to our excellent guest speaker, Amanda March, who will talk about values and vibes, the secret sauce for powerful professional learning support. All right, next slide, please. Next to the news, next slide. So next Fidelity Friday, you can see there, it's at 1 o'clock Eastern time. 12 to 1, sorry. And talking about student engagement and student voice, part of Intervention Fidelity. There is a discussion question for you to think about. Please come ready with your ideas, research, and resource recommendations. All right, next slide, please. Want to make sure you're all aware that we did put out an NPP, a Notice of Proposed Priorities, for the SPDIG competition for 24. You can see there that there are 5 proposed priority areas. If you would like to comment on those before we take all that feedback and issue a final notice, please do so. The deadline is April 29th, and you can always contact Jennifer if you have any questions about it. Please go ahead and read that in its entirety. It will help inform you if you're interested in that competition. Okay, next slide. If you have any resources or learning opportunities, please share them, add them to the chat. Looks like we've maxed out on the movie recommendations, so please do add any resources or learning opportunities that the group could benefit from. We'll continue to do that while we roll through a few more slides of this. Next slide, please. Okay, on to the Research Minute. Many of you should remember that we did cover the How People Learn to Learners, Contexts, and Cultures from the National Academies Press. And next slide. Talking about the role of emotion in new understanding. And we had Carol Trevette present to us a few years ago. And she talked about how adults learn much more than just adult learning principles. But some of the strategies that she talked about, using emotion, the brain's network, the emotional process steers behavior, some really nice insight that we'll be building on today with our guest speaker, Amanda. So next slide, please. Some of those evidence-based strategies, when we're talking about that, is giving people choice. Having learner-created goals obviously creates that buy-in. Other areas for motivation, looking at folks' interests, values, and self-efficacy. Always good to keep in mind as we're talking about adults, professional development, and learning. So we'll be building on that today. And without further ado, next slide. Want to turn it over to Amanda, talking about values and vibes, the secret sauce. Amanda, it's all yours.
Oh, Amanda, I think you unmute.
You know, how many years have we been doing this? And I still get caught doing that as well. So can everybody see my screen that says values and vibes, the secret sauce, the first?
We can. We can.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so
And we
much.
hear you just fine now.
All right. Awesome. So at any point, just start yelling at me, just unmute, start yelling at me. Thank you, Selena. I see your thumbs up. I appreciate it so much. So, and thank you for that introduction. I love that you've already had some conversations about the powerful nature of values and how integrating the concepts of values and emotion can really elevate not just the vibe of our learning communities together, but also the outcomes that we get from our learners whenever we're thinking about adult learning as well. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Kelsey and thank her in advance for kind of steering behind the scenes to go ahead and pop into the chat 2 different things for you all. You're going to get a copy of my PowerPoint presentation that's PDF'd. You're also going to get a copy of a note catcher. So this point, go ahead and be looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Kelsey. I appreciate it. So the PowerPoint, if you would like to follow along, please go ahead and do that. There's some live links in there as well, but this is yours to keep, as well as the note catcher. I love note catchers. It helps me stay engaged as a learner. You can either download it to your computer and save it and type into it. I've made it a typable to PDF. Or you can go ahead and print it out old school like I do and write that way, or don't at all. Again, we're all about choice here with professional learning. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me. And again, thank you so much today for the introduction. I'm Amanda March. I'm thrilled to be here with you all. If I look a little bit familiar to you, I actually did a SPDIG director's call a couple of years ago when I was working with the Florida SPDIG, consulting with them. And I presented with Peg Sullivan on our co-creation of a systems coaching model at that point. So I'm a fan of all of yours. I'm a fan of the SIG network. And again, I'm just thrilled to be here. A little bit about me before I dive into what we're going to be discussing today. So my passion lies, I always tell people, at the intersection of high quality professional learning, strategic planning and problem solving, and program evaluation for continuous improvement. So if you think about a Venn diagram, my heart lives right in the middle of those elements. And I feel like I'm with my people because I feel like a lot of you kind of share that passion as well. So in other words, I facilitate the capacity of individuals and organizations to achieve their goals as guided by their personal and collective values. And in fact, just recently, I started my own consulting company that really brings this to life. Everything that I do, my leadership and professional learning insights, I help provide to other people, but only as guided by their values. So really bringing that to life. So talking about values, my core values that guide me in my work is learning, collaboration, service, growth, evidence, and then of course, humor. I like to laugh. It's a very powerful catalyst if you do it really well in professional learning, or oftentimes I do it unintentionally, but I just lean into it when I, trip and fall in front of audiences or something like that. But so what I try to do is bring my evidence and passion together with that right amount of humor to really get people where they want to go. I'm a school psychologist by training. Any other school psychologists out there, either raise your hand or drop it in the chat. I want to see my school psych people. Let's see. I got a couple of thumbs up. Okay, I see. Hi, Stacy. Oh, good to see you. Awesome. So But I've had, since being a baby school psychologist back in Indiana over 20 years ago, I've had a variety of leadership roles in public schools and in the private sector. Most recently, I was the professional learning and evaluation coordinator for Corwin Press. I was the professional learning research and evaluation coordinator for the Florida Problem Solving and Response to Intervention Project. We could have probably crossed paths that way at some point or at a conference as well. And I'm currently a consultant and facilitator for Proving Ground at Harvard University, and I'm the executive director of Learning Forward Florida. So again, my passion is all about professional learning, building capacity to help educators help students, particularly students with disability. That's my heart. Disabilities, that's my heart as a school psychologist coming forward. And like I said, most relevant for you all, I had the privilege, one of my greatest experiences was working for several years as a consultant while I was at PSRTI with the Florida SPDIG project, while they were focusing on the SIM and Check and Connect at the state level and helping their educators move in a systems coaching capacity. And we started actually identifying their core values through their mission and vision. I've got some examples today that we're going to be looking at. So again, just a little bit about me, why I may or may not look familiar, but that's where I've been raised in this work that you all do as well. So again, so happy to be here. All right, so the title of our discussion today is Values and Vibes, the Secret Sauce for Powerful Professional Learning. So let's start there. So today I'm going to be sharing how we strategically activating individuals and organizational values and vibes. What I call vibes are those emotional states, emotions within individuals and the collective, using evidence-based practices will enhance your professional learning and coaching efforts in your SIG network projects. And many of you are likely already doing this type of work, so I'm excited to hear from you and learn from you as well. Like I said, you have a note catcher, and I encourage you to download it or print it out and use it for engagement purposes throughout here to take your notes, or not, your choice. Okay, but I just wanted to share too, I was so proud of this pick that I made of Values and Vibes for the secret sauce. And I was working more recently as I was babysitting my 4-year-old niece, and she was looking at this graphic and she asked me, she's like, Amanda, why is the ketchup locked up? I was like, what are you talking about? What? And then I realized, oh, it really looks like they're in jail. That's what she said. So that wasn't what I was going for this graphic. What I was hoping to really portray here is that values and vibes are the secret sauce, and together we're going to unlock their potential to infiltrate and infuse into our professional learning. So I thought that was funny. I might have to reconsider. Oh, thanks, Mary, got it. You got your note catcher. Go ahead and rethink this graphic, because I don't want to portray jail or being locked up or anything like that. It just kind of made me laugh. So moving forward then, so for our discussion today, you can see we've got our learning intention and our success criteria. Our learning intention today, or our goal for our learning today, is to learn how values and vibes positively impact professional learning and capacity building efforts. Okay, and at the end of our conversation, you will be able to confidently say, if I do my job right, that I can articulate how values and vibes, or those emotional states, impact adult learning, motivation, and engagement. And I can describe high leverage strategies to infuse values and vibes, or those concepts, within professional learning and capacity building efforts. Okay, so those are our success criteria for today. Okay, but in your note catcher, I want you to go ahead and look. I've created a scale or a rating system to kind of see how we're doing so far with our success criteria. Okay, when you see the clipboard as we go through our conversation, that clipboard that says note catcher, that's a cue for you to know that there's some information in your note catcher. We're going to do something with it, or it's just there for you to take notes. Okay, so we're going to start off reflecting on our success using I can statements. So where are you now from not emerging to expert? Okay, for these two criteria. Go ahead and take your time and evaluate yourself on the two outcomes for today. And if you feel so comfortable sharing where you are right now, go ahead and drop it in the chat. You might not have learned about this yet, or you might be using this in your practice. Go ahead and share with everybody kind of how you're feeling with the success criteria. And then at the end of the day, we're going to go ahead and do it again and celebrate any learning or any bumps in our learning at the end. Hadley, thank you so much. Oh, I love that name. If I ever had a little girl, she was going to be Hadley. Thank you. So you're about a 3. You're developing in both of them. Thank you so much for sharing, Hadley. Okay, same for Selena. I appreciate it. Ashley, congratulations. You're emerging for everything because you're a new director. You can only go up. Hopefully I can't make it damage. You can't go below that. So that's great. Wonderful. Okay, so like I said before, and the reason I really like to lean into success criteria and getting evaluation started with learning is that, like I said before, my core values, 2 of them are learning and evidence, okay? And I'm sure many of you share that as well. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up or say amen or yes, that your core values include learning and evidence within your work. All right, great. Wonderful. And I'm sure this is reflective of many of the teams that you support as well. We're all about data here. So this strategy not only aligns with these values, but provides a sense of accomplishment when reflecting on learning towards the end. Okay, so getting that pre and that post at the end allows our learners to celebrate even a little bit of growth. Okay, and if they didn't grow, that's okay too, but they've learned something to take back with them. And we know that having learners evaluate and reflecting on their own learning has a very high effect size, a 0.75. Okay, so it's always really nice to pause, celebrate, and reflect on learning. Okay, so in other words, when learners evaluate the learning based on their goals or success criteria, and you as leaders of that, when you allow them that space, those learners are more likely to incorporate the learning into their memory and their ongoing practice. Okay, it's really cool. So it sets it up really well for celebrating and also primes the brain for learning as well. All right, love it. And please keep the chat going amongst yourself. I'm going to try to be mindful of it as well. But if any questions come up and I don't see it, please go ahead, unmute, and shout out to me. This is a conversation. It's not just me presenting some work now. Okay, wonderful. So then let's go ahead and start thinking about getting clear on what we mean by values and vibes. Okay. There is room at the bottom of page 1 on your note catcher for your own notes in here as we kind of talk about what this means in practice. So values describe a person's principles, standards of behavior, and judgments about what's important in life. Many of you already know that, but we wanted a consistent definition for today. Examples include responsibility, humor, forgiveness, love, community, a whole bunch of them. Identifying and behaving in congruence with our core values helps us as leaders and educators make better, more thoughtful decisions about what matters most, thereby developing meaningful and purposeful goals, both personally and professionally. Okay, so it's all about identifying and elevating those values to make it more impactful to the work that we do. So also when we keep our values in mind when learning, we are more likely to lean into the content that inspires our values, hang that new content into our value frameworks and identities, which helps us manifest our new learning and content. So we as professional learning leaders really need to, our space and our kind of entry point should always be making sure that we not only understand the values of our learners, but make direct connections to the values because it's a powerful accelerant for learning. Okay. So we've talked about values. So what do I mean by vibes here then? So vibes is a distinctive mood or aura surrounding a person, place, or thing, as sensed or felt by another person. Okay, and I promise I'm not getting too woo-woo on this. There's research out there that's very clear that it's important, and I know you've understood the research in the past. But in the past, it was generally thought that emotions got in the way of critical thinking and learning, right? Probably through the Victorian hysteria phase and all of that, which of course doesn't make any sense. But we also know now that the research is clear that the brain networks supporting emotion, learning, and memory are all interconnected. We used to think learning and emotion were two separate entities in the brain. No, they are connected. So this gives us some insight in how to leverage values and vibes for our learners. We know then that the brain also responds to emotions, and emotions impact learning, right? So when facilitators and participants are passionate about the topics and connect with them emotionally through their noted core values, what they have described as what's important for them, and when we as trainers and facilitators, make learning more fun and engaging and a positive one, learners become more emotionally involved in the experience, in which increases their long-term memory and learning, right? So it's not just making facilitator moves with regard to knowledge, content, and practices, but we also need to be thinking about making these direct connections. All right. And then also research from a variety of disciplines, including education, psychology, management, and psychotherapy even, indicate that identifying, communicating, and acting in ways that are aligned with our core values positively impacts a number of factors that you can see on this slide. Okay, so a deep dive into all of the research is well beyond today's scope in our conversation, but it's so fascinating. But here you can see a variety of positive outcomes associated with a strategic focus on values and values alignment. Okay. So for instance, acting in alignment with one's values enhances various things, not just professionally, but personally as well, such as clarity of purpose, commitment to your work as an educator, motivation to succeed even when things get difficult, engagement in new and innovative practices, and even those hard practices, right, that might be a little bit more difficult. Increases personal and collective responsibility for student learning, which we always want to see, actual goal attainment by ourselves and our students, and increases in self and collective efficacy, which we saw earlier that Dave reminded us of. In addition, folks are more likely to implement practices with fidelity if those practices are directly aligned with their core values. And I know with our SIG network, we're all about fidelity of practices, right? So another indicator that we need to make these, bring these out of people and communicate them and make them active within our learning sessions. Okay. And for us right now, with the work that's going on, resilience and adaptability are crucial. Well, now more than ever in our current climate, right, of increasing pressures within our schools. Even a lot of the work that I've done in acceptance and commitment therapy, which is ACT, it's an evidence-based effective cognitive behavioral therapy, if you're familiar with that. What it does is it focuses on people identifying their goals to drive positive changes in their lives. In this world, this is called psychological flexibility. So when we can't control many things that impact our schools, like turnover, lack of funds, political contention right now that's going on, student poverty, our teachers can't control that and can become very dejected. But we can choose to live and act in alignment with our core values that increases motivation, encouragement, enhancing clarity of purpose, and all of that. Or we can choose to neglect them. We as leaders need to help our staff, our professional learning learners, and our students act in ways that are aligned with their core values to build up that psychological flexibility. We also know that it increases belonging when people act in accordance with their core values, as they're able to show up as their authentic selves within their educational community at any level of the system. Okay. Of course, that sense of belonging is powerful because it's one's emotional, behavioral, and cognitive engagement within the work that they do. Okay. And this also works for the collective as well. So educators driven by personal values or personal purpose that align with the school or district's collective values are more likely to lean in with deep commitment, more likely to stay, and more likely to power through and power up with the difficult work that we do. And we're going to be talking about collective values here in a little bit. All right. So that was my job in trying to convince you that values are important, but I would like to hear from you really quickly. Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. Just what are you thinking right now about this information on values? Is it something new, or is this really confirming to what you already know as a professional learning leader?
I think that it's very confirming. I'm echoing what some people have put in the chat. I'm also thinking about it both for my work with the SPDIG, but then also the team that I lead within the Vermont AOE, um, as a practice for us, the sort of an analog to how we would want teachers to be thinking about their values in terms of their school or their district. I'm like working it both directions, so I think it's great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Meg. And I appreciate you sharing that and the folks saying that it's very confirming. So that's what I love about this group. I don't have to convince you of anything. Either you already know it or you believe it in your soul that this is the right thing to do for professional learning or for other leadership activities that you at various levels in your organization, you're leading, I know at various levels. This is appropriate for all. Anyone, everywhere. That's why a lot of this research comes out of management even, and in for-profit companies and so forth. Oh, Mary, you got it. Builds relationships. To know when relationships are strong, change management is easier. Absolutely. It's a foundation for success. And values can be the glue for that relationship building activity to build that positive climate and culture that's necessary to bring change forth. Absolutely, Mary. Perfect. Perfect. So as we move forward, we are going to, so before we can infuse the power of personal and collective values into our work, we first need to identify them. Oh my gosh, Meg, I see a cute little cat tail and I get distracted because I'm one of those people when I see a cat, I yell cat and I have to have everybody look. So you all, there it goes. Look at Meg's cute cat. I've got one right next to me here. I call him my supervisor. He's watching me. But we're going to move into a value sorting activity to dive into our personal values, just a little one. And I'm just curious if anybody on here has done any sort of value sorting activity before. Go ahead and put it in the chat. And then when we get into a group discussion about it, I'm going to rely on you and ask you to kind of share your insights about how you've used something like this in the past. So in your note catcher on page 2, you will see a list of values. Okay, you can see them on the screen here. This, of course, is not an exhaustive list. There are many lists you can find online. Brene Brown has one. Elena Aguilar from Bright Morning Coaching has one. There's a lot out there. But I've used the values from the Peak Fleet card sorts. I don't know if you can see me right now. I'm holding them up. I've also linked it in your note catcher. What I love about this group of values on their list is that the values have not just, oh, Mary, you're on top of it. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. So they come in a card sort, and sorting is a great way to get to the bottom of your values. I've just listed them out in a table form here, but they have not only pictures, a lot of cards don't, but they also have a definition. So here you can see gratitude, a practical thankfulness to appreciation. They also have synonyms on the bottom, which I found to be very powerful. If you're doing this in a group that you don't have tons of time and you're building consensus, you want to make sure that you've got a definition, not just a word, inclusion or empathy, because that could be subject to, well, a number of definitions, but it already helps us get consensus on what it is. So they might not be the right definitions, but they're great definitions to get started with. So I've pulled these from these peak values cards and use them a lot. So the ones that I've selected here, like I said, certainly not an exhaustive list, but in the work that I've done with professional learning leaders and leaders in various levels of school organizations, these resonate really quickly with them. So these are the ones that kind of come out a lot in larger group sorts. So this is what we stuck with today, World According to Amanda. Okay. I've also organized them in columns that make sense to me: learning, harmony, integrity, and drive. But again, that's just kind of how I've sorted them. So right now, what I would like you to do, step 1, go ahead and select 3 values that are most important to you. And I know we're not all together, but this is typically where people struggle because it gets really hard to identify just 3. And that's the point. It's okay. But now I'm going to make it even more difficult because we are going to go ahead and narrow down to one core value that is most important to you. Mary's already telling us collaboration. Once you know it, go ahead and put it in the chat, please. Compassion. Thank you so much, Selena. Collaboration. We got two. Okay. Inclusion, Meg. Thank you. Integrity, Natalie. Resourcefulness, Colleen. Collaboration, empathy, Brittany. Yes. Wonderful. Integrity. Thank you, Lexi. Integrity, Patty. Okay, so we've got some overlap here. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, values are only as good as the actions that they manifest. So a value in action can also be called an animated value or a personification of a value. So in step 3 in your note catcher, go ahead and write down your selected value. And then think about, you don't have to write a dissertation, but think about what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like in action. Also consider an example of when you've demonstrated this value in action. So here we're moving from a list of values on a wall to what it really means to live that value in real life. We will do about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to transition into a breakout room so you can discuss this further, the small group. Pam, thank you so much. Oh, I hate to see you go because I've got some examples of your team's work. So I was going to give you guys a shout out here coming up, but thank you for joining while you can, and I'll see you soon. Okay, so we've had some time to think about what this value in action looks like, maybe sounds like, feels like, and maybe an example of when you or maybe even somebody else animated this value. So now we're going to move into a breakout room activity. We are going to move you into rooms of about, well, Kelsey is, and again, thank you so much, Kelsey, for driving behind the scenes. We are going to identify a couple roles when you get in there together. So one facilitator to make sure that there's equity of voice, just somebody who will volunteer to say, hey, you know, I'm going to make sure that we're all able to share. A timekeeper to make sure that everybody's able to share in a timely way. And then one person to share out on behalf of the group when we get back. Okay, so your task when you're in your small groups is to share your core value, what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like, and your example. But then together, think about this collective question. This collective question is going to lead our large group conversation when we get back. So how might defining and communicating core values enhance professional learning and coaching efforts? Okay. So that is what you are going to be working on in your small group, and the question that I'm going to be asking of all of you to respond to when we get back. What questions do you have? Okay, friends. Well, why don't we go ahead? I'm going to stop sharing and Kelsey, let's get them moved into a breakout room. And what I might do is hop around. Let's go ahead and do 8 minutes in the breakout room. 8 minutes. Oh, it's so good to see so many of you still here. I know you all do webinars too, and sometimes breakout rooms, that's when you get a lot of attrition. People peace out if they don't want to talk to other people. So I'm so glad that you stayed and participated. But yeah, so I just kind of want to hear a little bit if somebody would volunteer on behalf of their group, just kind of a summary of their discussion, and then thinking also about that collective question. How might defining and communicating and personifying, excuse me, core values enhance professional learning? So all of those things, who would like to unmute?
I'll go for our group. I'll just rip off the Band-Aid for our group. Tammy took notes, which was great, but I won't make her talk. Except I'm going to forget what we said. So we had inclusion and we had integrity. And we didn't really get to specific examples, but we did talk a lot about sort of the why behind our choices. We didn't have enough time because we really started talking. Yeah, I don't know. What am I missing? Tammy, help me.
Yes, yeah. So on inclusion, we just kind of talked about a form or an environment that leads to meaningful participation, and that like everyone who like they're welcome to participate, but also like giving an environment where people feel comfortable to participate and share. So that small group of 3, we really did get a little bit comfortable at first, so we got to know each other, and then it kind of that it has to be somewhere where people feel comfortable as well. So not just including them, but including them in a way where there's multiple opportunities to participate. And then even though James's was integrity, I actually felt like his was also persistence, because he talked about following through, and that what he meant is what he said. He'll own it, following through, even if you're going to fail, but just that integrity and persistence to work hard at something. I think we're kind of connected on James's, and that's as far as we got.
Thank you. And again, I'm so sorry that I love that you guys had a dynamic conversation, but I always pack in more to the breakout room than we're ever able to get accomplished. So especially with really, I'm just seeing Mary, sorry, to the in-person video. I had a non-video.
No, and I was the facilitator and I didn't even see all the people. That was ironic.
Oh,
So don't hide non-video participants. Don't do it.
Thanks for the feedback. Is that something that I did?
Oh, I was giving advice, just throwing it out to the universe. Yeah, no, that's not you. It was me.
Gotcha.
Now I see all the people that are here. I apologize.
Gotcha. No worries. So thanks, Megan. Thanks, Tammy, for sharing about the powerful conversations. And that's kind of happened when I was in a group with Jessica and Sandra, and we talked about, especially with Sandra, she talked about resourcefulness. And me personally, that one doesn't always bubble directly to the top, even though I appreciate it. But the way that she described it in her importance to her work as an evaluator really resonated with me, and Jessica as well. And we were both like, wow, maybe the next time we do this, we might lean a little bit more towards that one. So it's always nice to learn not just how, your own values, but how others interpret them and embrace them in their work. Awesome. What else? How about another group?
I'll go. Natalie was shout out to Natalie for taking on multiple roles, as there was only 2 of us.
Natalie.
We had integrity and perseverance. And we just talked a lot about our personal experiences with those values, and we tried to encapsulate it all into that defining and communicating core values to enhance professional learning. We focused on the integrity piece, and I think the big takeaway for us was we were both rule followers. We talked about that, but just having transparency, and we talked a lot about being honest about what's important to you and what's important in the work that you're doing is going to make it a lot easier for everyone that's collaborating to see that same goal. But also in the same essence of transparency, we talked about the baseline even here today, like where you are in your experience and where you need to go or where the gaps might be, it's important to identify those and be honest about those for your own benefit as a learner, but also for the coach to coach you appropriately.
Absolutely. Getting into that vulnerability too, with sharing where you truly are,
Yeah.
and creating a space. Thank you kind of for making sure that people feel comfortable to do that, because it's helpful for both the learner and the trainer or facilitator. Thank you. How about one more group, if anybody else would like to share some insights?
This is Ashley in Alabama. I don't mind sharing. From our group, we were all in agreement that integrity was our choice. We felt like it encompasses a lot of the other best practices or behaviors that we know will lead to greater outcomes when our coaches are coaching. We talked a lot about that humble approach to it, because it opens the door to allow them to say, you know, I need help, or I don't know, or instead of trying to give us the answers they think we want to hear, so that because they think we might judge them if they're not able to say the right thing or tell us that. So, you know, we talked a lot about how kind of approaching that, just respect, trust, it just opens the door for lots of other best practice behaviors or something like that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley. And clearly everything you said was brilliant, as expected from all of you. But what I really liked you said is those best practice behaviors. And again, when we're talking about values, I know a lot of us have worked, we've probably identified our values, done a sort before. Sometimes we have values on a wall from our mission and vision statement. Values are only as powerful as the behaviors of the actions that they manifest, right? And so that is really what I want to encourage you to do when you walk away today, is thinking about elevating the capacity of our values to do the good work with us and for us. So as we go ahead and move forward, and again, thank you so much for all those who shared on behalf of their groups, transition into like that values and vibe connection. And what is the relationship between the values that we just discussed and the vibes that we want to create? Our brain, it's all about brain science, right? Values are deeply rooted in principles that serve as anchors for that behavior, as we talked about, as well as our attitudes and emotions. They influence our emotional states because they represent what we consider as important and is closely tied to our sense of identity. So just through the literature, this is certainly, again, not an exhaustive list, but just talking a little bit about how values influence emotions, or the vibes, particularly for educators and leaders that we work with in the school system. So first and foremost, teachers and leaders often derive a sense of pride and self-esteem from acting in ways that are consistent with their values. So it's important for us as leaders to help them name and identify their values so that we can help them work in alignment with those values to get that sense of achievement, okay? It creates a positive emotional state, reinforcing their purpose and their satisfaction, which is so, so necessary today. In addition to that, values are tied to what individuals consider as morally correct. And I did hear that word moral in another conversation earlier this week when we were talking about values in a different group. When teachers can teach in a way that aligns with their values, they feel a sense of integrity. We talked a lot about that. And authenticity, which contributes to positive emotions such as joy and contentment in their workspace. Okay, all of these are great elevating states in order to allow them to commit to their continued work and feel a sense of satisfaction at the end of the day. We talked a lot about relationships. Values help shape interactions with others. Again, is that foundation we talked about when building a community of practice. And then when a leader's values, our values, encourage a collaborative and supportive environment, it can lead to more positive relationships at work and contribute to those feelings of belonging that we are always trying to create within our staff and our students. And belonging creates a sense of happiness, okay? Conversely, when there is misalignment, right, between an individual's values and their action, it can lead to emotional dissonance, stress, and conflict. Call that cognitive dissonance. So for teachers learning new skills that might initially seem at odds with those established methods or their preferences, this can create tension And oftentimes what we see is resistance to how they see their new skills and how they can actually integrate them within their value system. So that's up to us as professional learning leaders to make that alignment very clear for them to reduce that resistance or that cognitive dissonance that they might be experiencing. And finally, values serve as a source of motivation and resilience, especially during challenging situations. So having a clear set of values can help us navigate those difficult decisions we oftentimes find ourselves in, help us reduce anxiety within ourselves and others, and increase our feelings and sense of control. When people feel controlled and in value, based on their values, they are more likely to be motivated and embrace uncertainty a little bit more. So again, values and emotions are intertwined and influence each other. Recognizing and aligning personal and collective values really encourages it's really conducive to effective learning, leadership, and belonging. Okay, so I wanted to share with you, the more screens I have, the harder it is to figure out where to click here. Just some kind of examples of how I've worked with others in different systems to elevate, not only identify and communicate those values, but elevate them and personify them in practice. And I have to ask you, Mary, are you a part of Proving Ground?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, Mary Spencer. I see that
No.
you're from RIDE. Is that Rhode Island Department of Education?
It is, but no, I was not part of that group.
Okay, I'm sorry to put you on the spot,
I
but I
don't
thought
mind.
you looked
It's
a little
okay.
familiar. And there was a conference I was recently at, and there are some pictures from this. So I wanted to see if there was a connection there. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's
So
okay.
this is how I've helped some others kind of communicate and elevate their value system and to make them public. So in this first kind of example here, you see 3 people. This is actually the Learning Forward Florida board, and I walked them through a value sort. So not only just sorting and talking about it, and it's hard to see, but they have they've actually identified their core value, and they put a sticker with their core value on their shirt. And during our meeting that lasted a couple of days, they kept that value very present. So not only were we able to identify those values, but we communicated it to other people. So what we actually had folks do is to start celebrating when people were aligning their behaviors with their core values. Okay. They loved it. It was really cool. And what it does is it gets into that brain science of compliments. So when you call out somebody, a teacher, an educator, anybody with doing things that are in alignment with their core values, that's certainly a positive thing that goes into the brain science of giving and receiving a compliment. So every time you call somebody out or do a value shout out, you can see on the screen here, it's almost like giving them a charge of dopamine in their brain. It's like giving them $100. Their brains fuel up with dopamine, and we know that dopamine hits into that reward system, and compliments can serve as the form of that social reward, leading to that neurotransmitter of dopamine increasing. And we know when dopamine increases in our brain, we are more likely to be primed for learning and long-term memory. Okay, so it really, really works in these collaborative settings when you're sharing new information and making connections. And compliments or value shout outs benefit both the receiver and the giver. So we were going around and actually giving and receiving compliments. Both people or everybody in the group doing that actually sees that spike in dopamine. Okay, so they feel that gratitude, their brains are more primed for learning, and they're more likely to move short-term into long-term learning whenever you're talking about new skills. So again, this is how I easily incorporate it into large group trainings and professional learning activities. You can also see more recently, and I was asking Mary if she was there, we had for Proving Ground out of the graduate school at Harvard, they have a Proving Ground network where they're working with a number of districts and state agencies across the nation. They have a convening, it was in November, and what we decided to do was capitalize on this. So you can see these ribbons. We've all been to conferences where we get these little ribbons, right? So what we did was we have folks at the very beginning start with a value sort, very similar to what we did just now, and identify their top 2. and they attach them to their name tags. And we encourage folks to give and receive those value shout outs throughout the conference, and encourage folks to live by their core values, to show up at the conference and show up to their learning as aligned with their values. It was amazing. I had no idea how it would take off. And in the feedback we got, they thought it was the best part of the conference session. And they were taking it back to do it with their own district and state level teams, because they felt like it did give them kind of a boost in their learning opportunity and a reason to network together. So again, just some examples of how you might bring some values to life. And just kind of want to, we still have a nice group here. If you want to unmute or share in the chat some maybe different ideas or different strategies that you've used in the past to really elevate and compliment or reward folks for living their values, I would love to hear from you.
I don't have a example, but I am in a leadership program, and they talk about so many of the things that you've talked about today. It's just right there. Well, you mentioned it's just right there in the research, and these are things including appreciating values and appreciating the inner work life of employees, and just all these kinds of, I don't know what word can describe all of these types of concepts, but it's in the research, and it matters and it makes a difference and it helps people feel seen.
Thank you, Mary, so much for sharing. It helps people feel seen, but it also helps them be more engaged, help them be more motivated, and help them be better learners. And then we could say, then better supports for our students, especially students with disabilities. Stacy, I see your hand up.
No, I was just going to share that I've used this in other areas of my life. So there was a lot of, I sit on several boards, and on one of my boards, there was a lot of apathy, like people were not in the right positions. And so one board meeting, we did a core values activity, and we really then had board members think about their core values and align those core values with opportunities on the board. And then we actually put those people in those board positions, and people who went through that activity, we saw an increase in engagement. Folks felt that they were in a position that was better aligned with their core values and where they wanted to go. And so that led to retention on the board and people just feeling valuable. So that's how we've used that in the past.
Okay. Oh my gosh, mic drop, Stacy. That's amazing. And I'm going to steal that for a couple of the boards that I sit on as well. I love that. And it hasn't dawned on me to think about maybe roles that the people aren't in yet, but should take on, and how they align, how those responsibilities align. And sometimes we do see that misalignment. And of course, if there's misalignment, all the things that we don't want to have happen occur. Thank you. Awesome. Did I see somebody else's hand go up?
I'll say something. I work with mainly very small, rural, isolated school districts in Southern Colorado, and I have one school district who has had a lot of turnover in leadership, and so they, as a school, created this set of core values at the beginning of the year, and then unfortunately that just stayed there. And so when work started, it was a nice wallpaper, it was very pretty, and so we had to create a new implementation team for CMTSS. And so what we did is we took the core values that they, as a school, it's K-12 school of about 80 students, very small. And what they did over a course of a few meetings is they operationalized what the core value was going to look like in their meeting space. And so what I'm really excited about is that we go back to those, referring back to them in a positive way, because it's kind of it's 3 superintendents in 3 years. That's a lot of change and a lot of turnover, having to build trust. So I'm hoping that those are finished. We just finished them last Wednesday, and so we can refer back to those in a positive way anytime we see, very PBIS, right? refer back to those. So I'm really excited to see how this could help build trust within this team and get the work moving forward. So yeah.
Veronica, that's so inspiring. I love that. And I love that you actually go back to them and make them come to life. One recommendation that I've done with different groups is actually do, whether you call it innovation configuration or a practice profile, but laying out what those behaviors look like within your own context and making them meaningful. And it sounds like that's exactly what you've done. I've also worked in school change systems where the schools actually, when they develop their organizational values, there's like a value a week, again, very PBISE, or a value where teachers embrace and they put it on their welcome on their door saying, this is the value I am working on, and demonstrating today or this week or this month, this is what I want you to see. And this is what you should be seeing. Here's the QR code to give me some feedback. And then through that, they're collecting more and more examples of that value in action that then feeds into their values statements and so forth. So yeah, we can get really creative in this. I just put this together. It's beyond the scope of what, we have time to talk about, but some different strategies, not just for getting into the core values. Of course, we did the value sort, but including them in reflecting and journaling with the folks that you work with, in vision boarding, sharing stories of when they saw the values or leaned away from them and what happened, some role playing and coaching scenarios, and action planning and goal setting. And then also some strategies for leadership affirmation for you all as leaders to continue to affirm and reinforce and spike that dopamine up, right? For modeling, values checks, values shout outs, embedding them into policies and procedures. And we're going to move on next into kind of some resources to not just look at individual values, but those collective values and where they fit within the mission and vision statements and so forth. So I shared with you, and I will share with you my website. I'm pulling all of these. I'm currently working on pulling all of these different strategies and templates together as I continue to learn and work through this, and going to be putting them on my website as resources. So these will be fleshed out a little bit more, but I just wanted to share with you that the sky's the limit. There's so many ways that we can go ahead and encourage these values. Just really quickly, kind of for the sake of time, because I know I always, with my collaboration value, I always lean into conversation more than slides, but I wanted to make sure that we all understood so we can communicate to others how values and vibes align directly with professional learning within our SIG network, right? As we're building capacity of others to do the great work of our projects. So just a reminder, if you haven't seen this before, this is Learning Forward's theory of action. If you're not familiar with Learning Forward, it used to be called the National Staff Development Council, and it's the international organization for all things PD. I'm very involved in it. And like I said, I'm the executive director of the Florida affiliate, and they've got amazing resources for all things professional learning if you are not familiar with it. But here's their theory of change. And basically they say, of course, standards-based professional learning should lead to changes in educators' knowledge, skills, and dispositions, or that bubble 2. When we do that, right, if we do that well, then that should inspire and develop and broaden the repertoire of knowledge, skills, and dispositions that then change positively educator practice or implementation, that then we see those positive changes in student results. I had Jennifer share with me your SPIDIG project's theory of action, which aligns perfectly. I was so pleased to see this. I'm not surprised that I see it very well organized, that if SPIDIG delivers effective professional learning with fidelity, then educators will implement those practices with fidelity, right? Summarizing, and then we'll see positive changes for students, especially students with disabilities. So when we think about professional learning that propels our theory of action forward, we can lean into the CASAB model, or Joe Allen Killen's CASAB model, on the changes that we want to see in professional learning. I know she told me that you guys have talked a lot about the CASAB model, but basically we want to make sure that we're constantly targeting not just the knowledge and skills and behaviors that we want to see change, but the CASAB model, KASAB, also includes 2 A's. Okay. And Joe Allen Killian, the architect of this model, says that again, we're really good in PD around the knowledge, like what we want our educators to know and understand, and the skills, what we want our educators to do to inform behaviors. What we aren't as good at and what we want to keep front and center are those attitudes and aspiration changes. So here is directly where those values and vibes fit and infused are part and parcel, is that a thing, of our professional learning work. So when we think about our training and support, what attitudes do we want our participants to change, or what do they need to be successful? And those aspirations, what desires, motivations, etc. We can plan for that in our professional learning. So it's not just a value, is not just a value add to professional learning. See what I did there? It's part of powerful professional learning. Values and vibes are often overlooked, but they are essential pieces or the connective tissue to high quality professional learning. And again, just for the sake of time, I'm not going to kind of go into all of this, but just providing you an example of the goal here for this professional learning plan is for educators learning how to apply UDL strategies within Tier 1 instruction. Oftentimes, again, we see the people that we support doing a great job identifying success criteria or objectives around the knowledge, skills, and behaviors. What we need to make sure we're still instilling is those attitudes and aspirations about appreciating professional learning, leading into the core values and how our core values align with UDL strategies to make us more effective. Our aspirations. I want to be a better, a more effective teacher to all students. Well, UDL will help me do that because it's about my emotions, my wants, my needs, my values. So that is where values and vibes sit. Again, I feel like I don't need to convince all of you, but I just wanted to make that explicitly clear as you continue to ramp up the professional learning that you provide to your staff members and your stakeholders. So we have just kind of a pause and ponder here. It's in your note catcher, but I would love to hear from you. I once thought something, but now I know something. It could be a confirmation, something that you learned just today. Feel free to pop it in the chat or unmute.
Man, I'm thinking about this as you've been talking, and it's just so powerful beyond what it could do for the SPDIG projects. But people have done some really great and provided some examples of how it's been useful in other areas of either their lives or their work. And, you know, just thinking about it as OSEP even, and even the team that I supervise. But I think it's easy to think in an organization like an education or school or maybe even OSEP that we all obviously share the same values. But I now know there's probably a lot of value in being explicit about checking what those values are and what they think that looks like, and is it matched to the roles that people play. And it could really be a really nice exercise for re-engaging people and reinvigorating people that are, you know, potentially stressed out and having to work very hard.
Absolutely. Having to work very hard with more and more limited resources, all of the things, of course. So thank you.
And the harder you're working and the more stress you feel, the easier it is for things like empathy or, I love that the connection was made earlier with integrity going with transparency, right? That those could fade away because you just feel you don't have the time or you're too busy. And yet that would be a real setback.
It would be. And how easy would it be for somebody else, a peer or a leader, to say, wow, I know integrity is very important for you. I saw what you did there. That really demonstrated your integrity. Good job. Boom. You know, that's something so little can be so powerful to get us back on track to aligning ourselves with our core values. Thank you. Oh, I see something in the... Awesome, Ashley. If you would, I don't want to put you on the spot. If you would like to unmute and elaborate a little bit more, that would be great.
Okay. So I think coming into a position like this, or even coming into a position in the State Department, I always felt like to be a good leader and to better support, you almost had to have this tough exterior. And I just felt like you demonstrated yourself as a leader, just had behaviors that I now know are not what make a good leader, that allow our districts, for us, our schools or districts to want, trust us and respect us and believe in us and all of those things. And so I feel like, it's all about having behaviors that encourage collaboration and conversation and empathy and support, but people feeling safe that they know they have room to learn or that they can make mistakes, which ultimately leads to mutual respect. So I just think that that's kind of helped shape my mindset of what I pictured leadership being like in a position like this versus what we know actually will work and have the outcomes that we want.
Awesome. Beautifully said, Ashley. I'm so glad that this is being recorded. You guys are saying such powerful things. I love that you said it, and you talked about psychological safety and making sure that people feel comfortable enough to express their values. Just the simple act of putting this out there and discussing values provides a great is the first step toward building that trust and developing that psychological safety that is necessary for these types of dialogues. And as you said, to really transform the work. It's not about being an expert, right, in that type of leadership format. And sometimes you need to act that way, I know, to get certain things done. But really in this environment, we need to work more in alignment of the collective values that sometimes aren't really aligned with a type of stuffy political leader sometimes. So. All right, so again, just being mindful of time, I'm going to go ahead and transition into, we won't take as much time to dig into this, but I wanted to make sure that I provided you the resources that I use and that I lean towards whenever I'm helping a team or an organization, from whether it's a school team all the way up to a state level team or an organization beyond that. What I use to help them cultivate their collective values, because we know how important it is. So for those of you who already have collective values in your organization, that's great. You might want to revisit them. Or if you don't, here's the nice place to start, is always starting with your mission and vision statements. Sometimes I know that they are just what we talked about, like kind of a pretty decoration on the wall, but just like our values, we need to make sure that we're living our vision and our mission. And really bringing out and elevating and putting almost on a pedestal the values which will activate the behaviors necessary to accomplish our goals. Okay, so if goals, if values reflect what matters most, we really need to use this as a great positioning technique to bring those values front and center. So we know, you probably know this, research has found that although creating a mission and vision can be very helpful in the improvement process, whether it's in, corporate organizations or schools, it's never sufficient enough to bring about change. Educators and leaders must also tackle their values, or some people call them the collective commitments, that will make and honor, that they will kind of manifest to achieve their shared vision for the team. So one of my favorite frameworks, and that I actually used with the SPDIG project when we did this several years ago in Florida, is the PLC framework from the DeFores. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this or not, but I went ahead and in your note taker, I've developed this template based upon their work that starts with the mission, of course, the why for your organization, wherever you sit, the vision or the what, and there's some prompts if you're going and reinvestigating that to help with guide that conversation and some examples. But then they don't embed the values within their mission and vision statement. They have another statement all about their values or shared commitments. Again, this stem from the PLC work, but I've seen it work so well in a number of different organizations within and outside education. And then the values lead to the goals or what you want to accomplish there. So in your note catcher, you also have kind of the prompt for it's blank. And what I'm working on right now is actually a typable version of this to lead organizations through. So if you want to email me, I can go ahead and send that to you, or it should be on my website soon if you want to use it as another tool. So here's just an example. I know there's a lot of words on the screen, but gosh, we started with Florida SPDIG. I started consulting with them and coaching them back in 2017. And at that point, they didn't have a mission or a vision statement. So this is what we did. We walked through those 4 different quadrants, and this is what they landed on. And whenever anything got bumpy for them, and again, they were working with Check and Connect in the SIM or the strategic instruction model, they not only were able to go back to their anchor, what they said their purpose was, and their vision for how to get there, but what was really valuable to them was their set of values. Because oftentimes we get in sticky situations, right, as leaders and as professional learning providers, where we're asked to do things that are misaligned with our core values. They had them listed out here, and it became a great champion for their work. So I just kind of wanted to show you an example of what that looked like. Also, as we move forward, I know, is there anybody from Arizona who graciously, I've got it on the slide here, shared their mission and vision statement with us? I don't see anybody yet. So what I was going, they have a great mission and vision statement for their SPDIG project. What I was going to have us do if we had time is just try to just kind of do a quick search, or what values do you see embedded implicitly within this work that maybe they could take and carry forward to their value statement. Also, in Pennsylvania, for their Family to the Max, you also graciously shared this. Is that you, Rebecca? I see a celebratory kind of icon going on there. Again, a powerful, are you from Pennsylvania?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Again, we don't have time to, but I would go ahead and maybe if you could even elaborate a little bit, you've got a powerful mission and vision statement. What values might you want to see pull out of these to help carry your vision forward to connect to your goals? It's hypothetical. We don't have to talk about it now. But again, I just wanted to demonstrate some really strong SPDIG mission and vision statements that are ready to take it to the next level. Also, I wanted to shout out, I know Dr. St. Martin had to pop off, that I've been doing some work this year with the My MTSS TA Center. We've been doing weekly webinars where I've been facilitating them through high quality best practices in the design, delivery, and evaluation of professional learning. And what I discovered when we started, they had already been developing their core values as a team. And you can see them listed here. It's excellent, empowerment, unity, innovation, leadership, and trust. They've already defined them. So what we started to do is every month that I would go through and work towards our co-developed agenda, developing our knowledge and skills and so forth, we would identify one of the core values each time we got together and would do that shout out activity where we would call out and identify folks who were demonstrating excellence during that learning session together. The TA Center loved it so much that they actually created their own Jamboard to where at any time, not just in our training sessions, they're leaving sticky notes to sharing and shouting out their teammates for demonstrating. This just happens to be innovation. And then also leadership here. And here's Kim, she got an award. She was recognized as a great leader. So there's a picture there. But I thought this was great. And this is something that the work for core values that we were shouting out and calling out, again, they loved it so much that they wanted to embed it within their practices. So just another example there of how to capitalize on your core values and how to shout them out and share them out. And as leaders, making sure that we were reinforcing and rewarding people for that great work, because sometimes it's not easy to live by our values. Okay. So in closing now, I want you to go ahead and go back to the first part of your note catcher, and we're going to re-rate ourselves for today's outcomes or success criteria. So after our conversations today, go ahead now and rate yourself from not yet to experts. And if you're comfortable, go ahead and pop it in the chat. Thank you, Ashley. Of course, you're still emerging. Wonderful. Awesome, Meg. Still developing, but ready to practice. All right. So even though we aren't seeing necessarily changes from a 2 to a 3 or a 3 to a 4, we are still seeing some nuances there about inspiring us to action in what we're capable of doing right now. Perfect. I always include one of my favorite practices is a 1-minute action plan within a webinar, because we're not going to be able to get back together and do any sort of coaching or ongoing conversations unless you want me back. I would love to continue to work with you all in some way, or reach out to me and we can continue the conversations. But as a result of what you learned today, what are some things you're committed to doing? Don't feel like you have to do all 3, but I would love to hear from you. If you want to unmute or just pop something in the chat, what are you committed to doing following our conversation? It could be even, I'm going to dig into some resources that Amanda shared, or I'm going to think about how to maybe do a card sort moving forward. It could be anything. Let me know.
Amanda, I just want to thank you. This was really inspiring. And what I'm so excited about is that my office in Colorado, we're starting a school level training around CMTSS. And we really want to make it engaging and valuable. So I'm really excited about the things that I learned today and maybe reaching out to you. But yes, thank you so much. This was really great. Thank you.
Oh, Veronica, thank you so much. I'm just glad the word inspiring. I know when you say that to somebody who's like delivering a webinar or providing, like that is like the best compliment. So thank you for sharing that. That gets into my core values, right? So I just got that shot of dopamine. I hope you did too. And I hope you guys are all feeling it. But yes, feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, this was just skimming the surface today about how powerful this could be. And there's so many practical strategies, easy things that we can do. So thank you. Awesome. I'll bring the matrix. Okay, so the core values matrix. Yeah, and feel free to expand it. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that. That was just kind of the skinny version. I also do a full workshop where we really dig into it. But yeah, I love it. Perfect. Thank you so much. So as we, in the last couple of minutes here, I just wanted to share with you, we are not going to do that today. But my website again is Rise and Align Consulting. I didn't say this before, but Rise and Align, you heard align. Of course, it's all about aligning our values, because I'm all about core values-based work. And that's how kind of the lens that I approach all of my work with. And Rise and Align is a nod to my mother, who I used to say when I was growing up, many mothers did, and fathers, rise and shine. And as I got older, I hated it because she would wake me up when I was a teenager and I want to sleep more. But more recently, she got very, very ill with Huntington's disease. It was a long battle, a long road, and how I wish I could hear her say that again. Rise and shine. But she lived, she's my inspiration, because she lived by her core values every day of grit and growth and strength, and basically putting her family first. And you know, we're on the other side of it now. I miss her every day, but she is really the inspiration to a lot of my work. So that's why I call it Rise and Align Consulting. These are some of the services I provide. My favorite is doing bespoke professional learning. So like, tell me what you need, let's collaborate together, and let's go ahead and develop something that meets your needs. Some strategic planning, and also process and program evaluation. So if you're in need of any of that, reach out to me. Or if you just want to talk more about values and vibes and all things, reach out to me. But on my website, if you go there, there is a free downloadable ebook called The Values Blueprint, where it talks about 5 different strategies to ensure values-aligned organizational impact. So it works you through a process of working your team through using values for alignment and clarity, motivation, accountability, resilience, and community relationships. All the things we talked about today, but just kind of goes a little bit deeper. So, so with that being said, what kind of questions or final thoughts do you have before I turn it back over to Dave? Oh, and one thing, I spoke too soon. I would love to get some feedback from you personally. And I will share this. It will be anonymous, but I will share it back to OSEP and to Jennifer. But this facilitator feedback survey just comes directly to me. I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. It is one of my core values to constantly grow and get better, and to hear how I was doing and your thoughts from all of you would be exceptional. So thank you so much. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dave.
Thanks, Amanda. I think we can all agree that was a really reinvigorating presentation, webinar, inspiring. I think a lot of people will be taking this back to their work and maybe even other aspects of their lives because it could be so helpful. I also want to shout out to Excellence in the group here for attending today and for contributing in both the chat and taking yourself off of mute and joining the conversation in the small group breakouts. So thank you very much. Again, best of luck in the work that you do. We appreciate you here at OSEP. Thank you for all your work on behalf of students and families with disabilities. And have a great rest of the week.
Thank you all so much for your participation. You guys were a dream.
Thank you.